The Lelit Mara has been an insider tip among heat exchange espresso machines for many years and is found in many of your homes. Now, the V2 version has been available for quite some time. Naturally, it needs to make its way to our test bench, where we have meticulously measured it, thoroughly tested it, and most importantly, developed a completely new and optimized temperature profile for it, which we will show you in this video. Enjoy, and let's get started. We are back with an espresso machine video, specifically with the Lelit Mara, the V2 version of the Lelit Mara. We had carefully tested the V1 back then, and we also reviewed it in detail and compared it with a multitude of other entry-level espresso machines. Those videos about that, and of course, you can find our extensive review linked both above and below. But there has been a version V2 out for some time now, Michel. There have been a couple of changes. Some crucial changes have been made. Crucial, especially when it comes to turning it on and off. Setting up and of course overall in performance, on the other hand, not much has changed. No, but those are going to be the topics discussed in this video that we will cover here. And I would certainly say that what we have discovered is crucial for... You can't use the machine like any other machine, but you have to engage with the Mara. Get to know it like one would with music. You can't just handle the Mara like all the other machines out there. It really needs a bit of special love and care. But once you do, it becomes incredibly fun. The Mara is the Mara, and we've thoroughly examined many of these Maras in the courses we've held over the past years. These sessions are held every week, and you can learn in our home barista courses in Basel or also in Dinslaken to make good coffee with their own espresso machine. And what we learn there, of course, flows into these videos as well. And so we noticed, for example, that the temperature in our standard protocol, when we use it routinely, is, to put it mildly, extremely bad and not meeting our expectations at all. But we've discovered a way to improve it quite considerably. So let's take a closer look and see how it can be made better.
This is definitely a significant topic because it should also be when you have guests at home making two brews. That's absolutely no problem at all. We also found that out back then.
The second shouldn't have to break.
The second one shouldn't have to. Yes, it depends on the type of coffee. But exactly, we will delve into that topic. And of course, we will also provide you with today's updated and additional information, which have been revised and expanded, so to speak. How long is the frothing time, boiler sizes and all that, you'll find everything in the video. And definitely take into account what differentiates it from the V1. I think what is generally preferred is especially the red logo, the black logo. So if you notice a black logo like the one here, it's the V2. If you have a red logo, you have V1.
And aside from that, honestly, not much else has really changed overall.
And otherwise, not much has changed. So we can go through it once. It is a traditional heat exchange espresso machine. 2 circuits with a standing boiler, 1.8 liters, then a standing cylinder through the heat exchange principle for the brew group. That means we effectively have a single heater that heats the standing boiler, and additionally we have a transfer of heat exchanger principle or heat exchange inside this particular cylinder. It's completely enclosed. It's actually isolated from the steam area or the hot water region, yet it still manages to heat up due to the surrounding steam or within the steam environment itself.
A bit complicated explained. A pipe runs through the boiler and the water that we then brew with flows through it. And it gets warmed up as it flows through the pipe inside.
Yes, you could say that too.
Right? Exactly. The main boiler is thoroughly heated up properly.
Okay.
The pipe itself is being indirectly heated only.
Right. I think what stands out about the Lelit Mara X is mainly its size. So it's very, very slim. We're talking about 22 centimeters in width, and I think that's almost unique, really. So in 2 scratches, in 2 circles, it's definitely super slim. You have a depth of 41 centimeters, importantly without considering the plug at the back. The plug sticks out a bit, so you should add another 3, 4, or even 5 centimeters. And with the portafilter in front, then you are well over 50. So wherever the machine goes, it should be
60s deepness stand, because otherwise it's annoying when it sticks out running through the kitchen or living room and you hit the, what's it called, the handle thingamajig like me.
Hit.
Yes, but that
mount.
The handle hangs over like this. You bump into it, it falls to the floor, and then you end up with a chip tile, which is really just annoying.
That's annoying in the kitchen because you have it on tiles. That's right, because of that. And then we have a 35 centimeter height have a water tank with a capacity of 2.6 liters and a very unusually large drip tray for a heat exchange espresso machine with a capacity of up to 850 milliliters.
On the larger side, you can still move and pour it out easy peasy. Wonderful. Also, while we're already up front, what's noticeable is this drop height. Yes, that's right. If you enjoy filling takeaway cups with rich espresso at home, you're definitely in the right place here. We measured 11.6 centimeters. That's really a lot. We're often around 8.5 to 9. Yes. And then there are just 2.5 centimeters more. But that already makes a noticeable difference. That's why there's a small espresso platform included in this package here. And that works really quite well. It stands cleanly and firmly. The only minor drawback is that you can't balance a scale on it particularly well. But I actually think that's well resolved.
But I also think I don't even find it that bad, because we generally, and this is what we always recommend, work with a scale for such machines, which then reduces the space. And often these, I would say the range is, I think, 8 centimeters. Anything below that gets super, super tight with the scale. And then I have 1.5 or 2 centimeters more.
It's tight with the cappuccino cups, but it's not tight with the espresso cups. With cappuccino cups, it can get tight with the scale sometimes. And if you're only drinking espresso, then a scale or a small pedestal serves well. Michael, as always, the typical portafilter guy. It runs forward 58 IMS sieve. What does that touch?
Volume, it comes with one included. It's in now, indicates 14 to 18 grams. There we work somewhere with 18 to 17.5 grams. Then there's also a big one included, which goes more towards 21 grams. I don't really think that's necessary at this exact moment. Of course, included in the delivery package is the nice, really good Lelit tamper, which is designed to be a little bit larger. Below, it actually shows 58.55 on the gauge. At first, I would have said it's 58.4, but it really closes perfectly. That's really a lot of fun. In terms of value, it's slightly lower than what we usually have. We normally have something like 0.8 millimeters. Yes, exactly, 0.8. Here we are at 0.6, so there's almost nothing.
Almost no closure, and thereby also nicely flush. Yes, indeed, temping is actually quite possible. Definitely a good tempo, no need to replace it, no. What we haven't mentioned yet, Michelle, is that it's actually really affordable. You can get them for under 1,000 euros in the European region and in Switzerland for around 1,300 to 1,400 francs. There are quite often
offers. I have also seen 1,100 times. Exactly, so the price stability of the Lelit machines, that might be a little bit questionable.
In terms of stability, yes. Otherwise, you can of course discuss stability in general, and you can also discuss edges and corners, of course. And I absolutely think you can notice it in many different places. Yes, definitely. Just take a look at this lid once more, right here, and you can see some really ugly and poorly punched holes up there. It's quite obvious. They really are. I mean, it seriously looks like you just went ahead and grabbed the drill machine yourself. So, sharp are the edges here indeed, and also these holes are just as slanted, and otherwise it is sharp here too.
You know, I actually shaved today just for you, so I could get your lovely and endearing remarks, but I think that will suffice nicely. I think that will be enough.
Then we have the plastic, also we take this as plastic, but it is actually on the simple side as well. Oh my goodness, but it does the job it's supposed to do. You can't see it and you don't cut yourself on it. You can cut yourself again, but of course if you play around with the drip tray a bit, that really is...
Yeah, but over here it's genuinely super hot and spicy.
So that's just the way it is. You simply need to know that. And I find it especially true, especially with these drip tray things. I mean, the lid is one thing, but if you now, I don't know, maybe you had wet hands from rinsing, and then you go to the drip tray, empty it, and perhaps even clean it thoroughly with a cloth. Those are the moments when you end up accidentally cutting yourself.
That's why, and we also have the curved colored one here, once again, for everyone to take a really detailed look at. What I would highly recommend for all of you with Biancas, with Maras, and so on and so forth. I'm actually not sure if there's an Elizabeth available in colored versions. I really don't think so. I believe it really makes such a big difference. Whether it's white or black, with this coating, it just makes everything feel more stable. So that too, this could actually be quite similar to a snare drum. Now I've put the brushes back on once more. You don't have any fingerprints there either. Actually, I should have taken the black one for you.
Black also gets prints.
Black gets more hair bridge?
Yes, Michelle, We had a black one there, measured it, and we had a second model there, got the black one repaired, and then measured it again, and as we mentioned, checked in the courses from time to time. So what we report now is based on testing several machines with the black one that we had didn't work at first. Yeah, so it had to be thoroughly checked again, and then it worked properly afterwards.
Exactly. So she made hot water, but the water was far below 90 degrees. So she had to go to Lelit for retesting, and it was found that there was a defect in the heater. We once measured temperatures somewhere around 85 degrees, and we were aware that there was definitely some kind of technical defect involved. It is an electronic device, and such issues can occur, which is why it makes a lot of sense that you purchase machines from reliable sources or have your machines checked offset periodically. There are different vendors who provide that service, or they could come to us in a training course and we handle it there.
Now I have to ask a bit provocatively, did you order them from an online portal or where?
No, I purchased them from a specialized dealer in Switzerland.
But it still came broken.
Exactly. It can always happen because I really don't know what the agreement is there. You know, we always check the offset anyway.
You could say that, yeah, then let's check, okay.
Doesn't matter.
Not.
Interpretation. Michel,
I just checked the box and noticed that the filter is no longer included. Did you already dispose of it?
Yes, I believe Andrea and Thomas have already tested them out thoroughly, and they both know very well that the Lelit filter really isn't particularly useful for much of anything significant at all.
Talking about the filter, right?
Exactly. That is fundamentally quite an incredibly smart solution. You insert a plug-in filter into the water tank and replace it roughly about once a month. And then it's all done, and you've got the ideal coffee water. If this filter actually did what it is supposed to be doing. And so I don't have to subject you to a lengthy 2-hour monologue about coffee water. It's simply crucial to understand that this filter doesn't offer the kind of thorough filtration that makes coffee taste delicious. That protects your machine. It is a so-called desalination water softener, like many desalination systems at home in the basement or so, if you have that. To have soft water for the dishwasher, whatever. But that's not tasty, especially when it comes to coffee. So please do not use this filter that comes with it, thank you. Throw that away. It doesn't make good coffee and processes coffee water differently, perhaps with a drip filter or other methods, but definitely not with the one that comes provided in the package. Trust me, it won't be any fun and you won't enjoy the coffee it makes.
Michel, you've already presented this entire 2-hour lecture previously, precisely in one of your own recorded videos. We'll be providing you with that link below. However, there's a comment I'd like to add here right now. Yes, so the question is, are there other plug-in filters?
Yeah, but unfortunately it doesn't really fit into this particular device. That's a bit of the trick with this situation.
If anyone has an idea or perhaps even just a template for the 3D printer on how to actually use those traditional filters from Brita or BWT with the Lelit machine, it would be highly appreciated. Please write it in the comments. Definitely. Many people are curious and we haven't given an answer yet. That's actually not nice.
There are various other manufacturers out there who collaborate closely with a range of different partners for filters that indeed include such specific features.
But they don't fit in.
They don't fit in here. So basically, you already have the template of how it should look and just need the adapter piece for in here. Yes. ECM Profitec, for example, they have something like that. Yes.
This way now exists. This is now available for their machines.
Intensive filter, exactly. Great, that totally makes sense. It's a decarbonization process. It tastes better afterward.
So now we move away from the water and other accessories. You could also say there's only a porter filter included. So you have to say you can use different sieves there, but it always has this double spout at the front. They're positioned so close together that it would flow into just one single espresso cup. That's the beauty of it, plus the nice aesthetic effect.
Aiming, yes.
Yes, as long as it's not too tight, right? So a small glass would be tricky, but a broader espresso cup, that would definitely work. Additionally, what I actually really like about this porter filter is that it always flows forward. Yes, it's naturally demanding in terms of filmmaking and beautiful. And at the same time, yeah, you just see the espresso coming out and whether it bubbles or not. Michel, and much of what we've talked about up to now, we could equally say about many other heat exchange espresso machines. The Lelit Mara is quite unique in several aspects, offering a variety of adjustment options, and this is where a very important distinguishing feature starts to come into focus, that we need to discuss compared to the predecessor.
Correct. Briefly technical, you have a 1.5 liter heat exchange espresso machine. A short explanation, you have a cylinder inside which is heated by the surrounding steam. It's wonderful. The main difference compared to many other machines out there is that we have two carefully positioned measuring probes inside. It's not a pressure switch, Rather, it's a PID sensor that measures what is being regulated. The one sensor that is fairly typical, almost everyone has it, is located in the steam area. That means we control the steam temperature. But the Lelit Mara X, as was the case with the first version, has a second sensor located in the heat exchanger, specifically for the espresso water. Now the machine has the capability to brew with a primary focus on maintaining the espresso temperature, or it can alternatively brew with a priority on enhancing the steaming capabilities. The principal difference here is that during the brewing phase, when we raise the lever, the heater ceases to heat up, thus maintaining a significantly more consistent brewing temperature.
During brew.
When brewing and with the brew-focused setting. In the steam-focused setting, it operates just like a classic heat exchange espresso machine, similar to all the others, and then it heats up again. What are the positives and negatives? On the positive side, we are typically much more consistent in brewing because we do not increase the temperature. The downside is that after brewing, we end up with slightly reduced steam pressure, and as a result, we don't have as much steam power readily available to us immediately afterward. What the machine then does is give full power to the steam for about 120 seconds to the heater, since there's only one in there, and bring it back up again.
So, brew mode, Michelle, and steam mode. Correct, we've got that right here. Pretty clever, wouldn't you agree?
Actually good.
Yes, we can definitely say that the espresso is brewed way too hot when we're in steam mode. In that sense, the steam mode is actually more like, I don't really know when we'd ever truly want to use it. It doesn't really matter. The brew mode is actually quite interesting for making espresso. And the other one, well, yes, scenarios like hot chocolate for many people. For that, we could switch to steam mode, but the espresso just gets way too hot. We can already say this now, 98, 99. However, something very crucial has happened now. From the V1 model to the V2 model, and Lelit definitely didn't communicate that very loudly.
No.
And above all, a lot of retailers somehow completely missed that. And now you go for such a V2 model, buy it. A lot hasn't changed in the machine, only the control system has changed. Takes the old user manual, and in there it clearly specifies which the brewing mode is.
Yes, now it's getting a bit more complicated. In the old version, it used to be like this. When you have the point, so it's 0 and 1, and you can clearly see this switch located right here on the side. If I take a look at this now, do I have this set to the 0 position here now?
Is today the day?
This is the brewing mode we have for today.
And before, what was it?
Steam mode.
And in the instruction manuals?
We'll keep it straightforward and simple. If you happen to own the new model that features the black logo, then you are definitely in the brewing mode, which is set at 0. At the first level, which basically means when the switch is flipped upwards, you will find yourself in steam mode. In the older version, it's the opposite. Now, this is extremely important. If you have read the instructions from an old manual for your new device, you have set this switch incorrectly because it was still reversed at that time.
To this day, we've still come across user manuals from back then on a variety of different websites. Exactly. Lelit itself cannot say with complete and absolute certainty in which specific serial numbers the switch was installed in which particular way.
The answer was definitive. It's definitely like that with the new models.
Today's factory production.
Yes, and particularly if the logo happens to be black in color. I believe the straightforward classification is black logo, new model, version 2 switch, position 0 is brewing mode, while position 1 is steaming mode. If you have the red one, it's the other way around. Very important.
Very important. One of two switches. This is to distinguish whether I am in brew mode or steam mode. We always recommend brew mode unless you really just want steaming. And then you have the option to adjust the temperature to 3 different levels, right? How do you go about doing that?
We have another switch located here in the front, which has position 0, 1, and 2. This effectively means that position 0 is set to be somewhere around 90 to 91 degrees. Position 1, 92 to 94 degrees, and position 2, let's say approximately around 96 degrees. I wouldn't make such a broad generalization because, to be really honest, it simply doesn't operate with that kind of precise accuracy. There are definitely differences, as is best, but it's honestly not that bad at all because it always depends a bit on how long the machine has been left idle.
Very crucial. How long does the machine stand idle? And of course, secondly, how many cups are you making in a row afterward and at what time intervals? And that brings us to the important point we promised at the start, which is a detailed recommendation on brewing with it. And I would say, let's prepare this espresso precisely the way we prefer it, and after that, we'll proceed to make a second one. Make, but then our recommendation or the subsequent recommendation, and then explain clearly what we want to convey to you all.
I thought we could then go and drink it together.
May I present you with this charming little cup?
Yep.
We're once again happily enjoying our delicious Brazilian coffee.
Well, yes, 1/3 of that, at least, and 1/3 Mamie, and 1/3 Nicaragua.
And it turned out to be a longer extraction.
It has turned out to be somewhat of a longer extraction process.
You can recognize it with our dry spits blend, right?
He then begins to develop a slightly more pronounced cocoa note, whereas the acidity significantly recedes far into the distant background. However, the sweetness is still present. I feel it's now more of a traditional extraction for a classic coffee drinking experience.
All right, but didn't you have enough at 44 seconds?
It was now a little more than 30, but can this coffee handle that? And we roughly know where we stand in terms of brewing temperature.
Now we wanted another one too.
Exactly. The important thing is that we don't do it immediately.
That's why we chatted for a bit. Now we could basically make an espresso.
We could basically make another espresso for Larissa. Let's go. So let's get a cup of coffee for Larissa, because we always forget her and only ever make 2 cups. Ben, you definitely like drinking from the same cup as I do.
Aha, that too, but I thought you were just going to drink it now.
Now he's really won.
Now he's won. Took a while.
Right? So in our perception, that was a 27-second shot. And now Nicaragua is back on the scene again.
Dear Michelle, before we go into detail about all the adjustments we've made, let's quickly talk about the changes we've implemented. You have waited for quite some time now. Instead of pulling the espresso immediately, how long did you end up waiting?
Around 3 minutes. Around 3 minutes is needed. Maybe 2.5 will be enough. But we discovered, to put our classic test protocol into the right context, that we consistently perform 5 separate brews as part of the coffee maker's standard protocol. We've been doing it this particular way ever since we started, and each of these with a 1-minute interval in between. That means we brew, leave the portafilter locked in for 15 seconds, then unlock it. Depending on the machine's specifics, we either rinse it right away or rinse before brewing.
You're talking about the temperature measurement, and that's what we did. Exactly. After that minute, 5 times in a row. Yeah. And then something happened. When compared to all other types of espresso machines and even other heat exchangers, the Lelit Mara unfortunately performs quite poorly. Performed, and we were definitely in the perfect mindset to say, oh my god, this is really bad.
So it was really bad. The first test was good, so the machine needs 25 minutes to heat up to levels 1 and 2. At level 0, it's too cold, probably more like 30 minutes or even more.
That means the lowest temperature setting needs a bit more.
And then the initial exam went well.
The first test is then in the temperature, but again 25 minutes. Classic heat exchange espresso machine story, Kaffeemacher E61 story, needs time to heat up. So here the case, the first test turns out well. The problem, and it is also well, we need to briefly explain 2 different things, especially because of this pump. We experience a very slow and gradual approach to reaching the target temperature. It takes about 10 seconds to reach those 92, 93 degrees that we aim for. And then we stay pretty consistent. So if you want to make a double espresso at home, wonderful.
Then it becomes challenging. The next brew is almost hitting 90.
So again, if you want to make multiple espresso, if you want to make multiple espressos, the whole behavior changes because then it won't stay there. And especially if you do it quickly, like in this protocol, and then compare it 1 minute later, the espresso, that's a standard procedure. Imagine that you're at home carefully preparing an espresso, just as you would in your favorite cafe.
And maybe it's 1.5, but usually it's not exactly 3.
Yes. And then the temperature drops.
Exactly, and then the third brewing process takes place, which is actually 1 single degree lower once again.
The fourth and the fifth again, so it goes down. With each brewing process, the temperature gradually decreases if you brew at a traditional interval of 1 minute. This means that for us, the overall temperature difference we observe totals to about 8 degrees. Michel, about these correlations between all temperatures, it's naturally also due to the slow increase, but it is indeed substantial.
Does that apply consistently across all the various temperature ranges? So whether level 0, 1, 2, it doesn't matter at all. And we're talking about a test protocol after 25 minutes of heating up. This is not WBC, but truly 25 minutes of heating up and performing 5 brews. She doesn't particularly like that. She enjoys the first one and does it well, but after that she doesn't like it as much anymore.
Yes, that's a takeaway, I would say. You can just remember that. A brew is good, so we don't really need to get into any further details about protocol stuff or discuss how you could potentially brew with it to get the most out of it. If you just do a double extraction, it fits perfectly. It fits after about 25 minutes, and in both the medium and highest temperature settings, we're consistently around 92.5 degrees Celsius. Not higher. So we are not at 93, 94 or 95 degrees, but we are consistently measuring at 92.5 degrees.
In the Kaffeemacher protocol directly after heating up. And what we decided to do next, because that's simply not satisfying at all, definitely not. And it also doesn't match the machine's logic, because when it turns off the heater, it's not ready to start brewing immediately. The machine isn't designed to handle brewing right after powering down, as this would overwhelm the system and result in poor coffee quality. And now we have come to the decision that we are going to adjust the protocol so that it more accurately conforms to the real behavior of the machine. So we could properly address the issue at hand and subsequently assign the machine a 3-minute gap instead of just a 1-minute gap. And when we brew once, wait for 2 minutes, or to be more specific, 2 minutes and 15 seconds, then we drain the system and then we proceed to do the rinsing. I'm just getting to the rinsing part now because Lelit actually advises against it with this machine, which we definitely wouldn't recommend to you. Not because of the heat, but due to leftover coffee.
What we definitely recommend to you.
So definitely rinse, right? We don't recommend don't rinse. Double negative. Then 45 seconds break and then the next shot. And then it was really a super nice moment for me because that's a machine that's super affordable, where Lelit actually put a lot of thought into it and that we can really get into it.
We have this specific method of testing, but the machines themselves are quite different. And in our test run, the machine's performance was notably poor. But that's a very interesting question, and it's certainly the crucial question that we really need to resolve ultimately. What can we actually provide to you? What we can now offer you is please take your time. You don't need to sit here with a stopwatch counting 2 minutes 15 exactly. It'll end up there again. And the crucial point with this particular coffee machine is, yes, when we brew coffee, it doesn't actually reheat at all during the brewing process. Then it's missing in the temperature, so if we make the next reference directly, it didn't have any time to heat back up again, and that's also missing here in the circulation at the front. And that's why we need to give it this time, and if we then give it some time, a lot of warmth really comes through, and then we are back at a stable temperature and can move on to the next phase. It's simply not a machine that particularly prefers very high frequencies.
Right, that takes care of 3 complete brews entirely. So it's really fluctuating somewhere between this 92.3 to 92.8 or even the 9 range. From the 4th brew onward, it starts to increase, not drastically, but the next one is then more around a bit over 93. And the 5th brewing, then hovers around 94 or briefly rises above it. But that's still very clearly within what you'd consider an acceptable range. And then you successfully managed to make a total of 10 espressos in a relatively short period of time. And then for me, another exciting scenario was the one with the rinsing. Because if we instruct the machine to let the water run again, then it won't fully heat up. And that could potentially have a noticeable impact. We actually went ahead and double-checked that, and it honestly doesn't really make any difference or even matter when exactly you flush. I wouldn't do it right before brewing. I would always do it during the cool down. It's just more sensible in terms of the process. Unlike with classic Faema brew groups where you normally do the rinse right before brewing, I would rinse here while taking a break. We then did another measurement scenario where we, directly after the brewing process, relaxed, did some rinsing, then waited for those 2 minutes 15. So in total, it's about 2 minutes 45 of waiting time, and then we started brewing. The behavior remained consistent. Thus, it doesn't make any difference if, when you have guests over, you serve the cups, leave the portafilter in place with the coffee still inside, and initially serve espressos, or in some instances, froth milk to make cappuccinos, then brew the next ones, and whether you then proceed to immediately remove the portafilter. Knocks out rinses or first rinses before making the next brew.
Exactly, rinsing always has two levels. On one hand, you want to clean the shower anyway, so you don't have the old coffee in the next coffee or next espresso. And on the other hand, it can also be a level of temperature control. Well, we mentioned that more time should be allowed. Yeah, plus there's also the WBC protocol. That leaves a lot of time. Now we can take a look at it. On one hand, it gives time because it gets activated, or rather performed. This involves 14 consecutive brews after 1 hour of operation, and then with increasingly shorter intervals. Now, one might expect that the temperature would be much more stable and significantly better there, because it has its rhythm and so forth. However, that's actually not the case.
No. So first, let's briefly discuss WBC. The protocol is actually designed for espresso machines used in the World Barista Championship. Accepted machines. This is a heat exchange espresso machine. In a heat exchange espresso machine, you would typically find, ideally, in the best case scenario, maybe about 120 to 140 milliliters of hot water. So it's a little bit more than just a single shot of water. And then we proceed to add cold water once again. Of course, it is surrounded by 128 degree steam and hot water. But eventually, everyone leaves. Down to the knees, definitely. Even with the Kaffeemacher protocol, it usually goes downhill from there. It's held up for quite a bit now. Additionally, we have the thermosiphon effect, which really heats up a lot when it's just sitting idle. This is a heat exchange espresso machine issue. And Lelit clearly shows this. No matter what temperature setting we're on, if we let the machine sit for an hour, we're boiling coffee, not brewing it anymore.
First, we boil some water, and then we use it to make coffee even in the initial servings. We are then at 98, 99 degrees, and also the second and third shot. They are so hot because the water is here, it's there, everything is hot. It's just that everything is hot, and over time the temperature gradually drops. And by the time we get to the 14th shot, we're only at 88 degrees. However, it's really a wide range of temperatures, and we measure a significant difference of around 15 degrees between the low and the highest temperature, and I'm specifically referring to the temperatures between the 5th and the 25th second of extraction time over all 14 shots. And similarly, the standard deviation looks like this. Well, that's not the intended capability of this machine. Just leave it on, keep it running, and then use it either frequently or infrequently. The Lelit Mara X simply isn't designed for that.
I mean, in general, two circles. Of course, there are some that perform a bit better in the WBC, absolutely. But I'm not buying a heat exchange machine if I want to make 14 shots.
Why we would buy a heat exchange espresso machine is another interesting topic, but I think we've covered the most important things about temperature performance. Absolutely.
I would also highly recommend, especially considering energy efficiency aspects, to always make sure that you turn on the machine. If you need them in half an hour, then start the brewing process and prepare those few coffee shots. And then please turn the machine off again, because it doesn't make sense to just leave it on. Let's assume now you have guests and you're brewing maybe 3 extractions, 6 people, or maybe even double espressos for 4, doesn't matter. And then, is your coffee delicious because you've invested a lot of love, have a great grinder, weighed everything, done everything wonderfully? And then you probably have guests who say, I'd really love another cup. So you head over to the machine, release the portafilter, and thoroughly rinse it out. And then it really starts to steam, because perhaps you've been chatting for around half an hour or so, considering that it's such a cozy and comfortable setting. What we can really recommend is a so-called cooling flush, which is actually typical for the Faema brew group. If it steams like that, just let the water run for a bit longer. You might not be perfectly precise with the temperature then, but it should still be fine. But when it steams, you're more in the range of 98 plus. That's definitely no fun. And then you can use this cooling flash, so you don't have to Say, there is no more coffee now because my machine is too hot.
That's how it looks. And now we're going to heat up some milk. After that, we'll use it to prepare a delicious cappuccino. And we are staying in brew priority mode. Yes, because we are simply under the assumption that this is our standard mode of operation. Yes. And it should also work for steaming. And if it works with that, then it will certainly work in steam priority mode too. We need to switch sides as the lance is on the right. Let's go.
So, Mara generally has a well-executed roll phase. She has always performed exceptionally well in that aspect. So, she applies pressure. The heating process isn't super quick. But you can really see it clearly, like you can see it at this wave on the edge. It turns really nicely. Now we are almost there. So it is really quite a very pleasant and thoroughly enjoyable steaming process. You have enough pressure to get a decent rolling phase, but at the same time, you have slow heating, and that makes steaming with the Mara really very pleasant.
Cap?
Yeah, I poured mine a bit too far up front. I always say if you want to create some truly awesome pictures, just make sure to leave a clean, crisp brown edge. And mine was over here. Just take a look. It's just a little too close, so it ends up tasting too much like milk for my liking.
I think that's an absolute disaster too. So we should redo the video now. This is a machine test, not a latte art video, dude.
All right, my apologies.
I love you too, brother.
Yes, so what you can very clearly and unmistakably see is that it's holding very steadily at around 1.5 to 1.6 bar on the very first level, while it is meticulously and extremely carefully focus testing. And then it begins the brewing process and you notice it dropping to around 1 bar. If you were to steam at the same time, it would be steaming at approximately 0.8 to 1 bar. You need to... When the brewing starts, watch the first drops, that's when it begins. That means you have the last 10 seconds of the brew where you are actually steaming. And then it will heat itself up once more. And what you will notice is simply that the initial heating phase is somewhat milder, and then it gradually increases to a considerably higher level. I actually just opened it during the video, when the brewing was done. Then we simply have a slightly faster heating. Interestingly, the pressure remains constant. This is really a lot of fun. So this rolling action, this distinctively typical Mara-like excellent rolling action, it absolutely stays. It simply takes a little longer to heat up thoroughly. And honestly, with 36 seconds, we're really not dealing with an extremely long heating duration by any means.
However, it was actually thoroughly mixed after brewing. That is really quite important to mention and keep in mind overall. And I think that's important again, especially compared to our original test, which we conducted as part of this extensive test series. One criterion we closely examined was how effectively a machine performs across various scenarios. Yes. Also, initially indeed, and that was a test criterion which we established back then, we also wanted to find out which heat exchange espresso machines do it better and which do it worse. Even if we wait until the entire brewing process is completely finished and then begin, we are still significantly faster than our biggest opponent, the single boiler machine, where you first have to wait for it to heat up properly. That means yes, this is really a question of whether I wait for 25 seconds or not. And here we have it right now. Waited a bit longer and then the power is definitely strong and very impressive. Yeah, totally. And also 36 seconds, that's a good value.
That is indeed an impressively good value. At the moment, when we are steaming simultaneously, you definitely have more of a 45 or even a 44-second value in there. It absolutely takes a significantly longer amount of time. And what consistently stands out as a highly positive aspect for me, let's call it a beginner-friendly steam plant, is the undeniable fact that I have constant and reliable pressure, but a slow heating process. This means you have a substantial amount of time to maintain this rolling phase smoothly and continuously, adding just a little bit of foam intermittently. If you ever froth with the gastro machine and have a frothing time of well under 20 seconds, then you need to get volume in super quickly so that you can roll as long as possible afterwards. And this makes it super simple and easy right here.
And then we can make nice cappuccino, more or less nice latte art. In any case, we can have fun with the machine, and that is actually something we can say overall, Michelle. I also think that's quite important. Machines do vary. Lelit has put a considerable amount of thought into this. And that has resulted, in this particular case, in it being incorporated into our standard protocol, this term we've frequently used throughout this video, into our standard format for conducting tests. Doesn't quite fit. This machine requires a slightly different operation than others. And that means in this particular scenario, you should wait a little bit longer between the brews to ensure the temperature stabilizes once again, because only after the brewing phase, the reheating phase in the boiler will commence. Otherwise, we will keep dropping from shot to shot, getting progressively colder and colder over time, and eventually the espresso really is not going to taste good anymore at all. But the machine definitely has the potential to make great espresso, great cappuccino, and be fun for us.
Absolutely, especially combined with this pump that is installed, which first of all is super quiet. So we're somewhere around 53 decibels, which is both genuinely and quite impressively quiet. Each and every grinder, by contrast, is significantly louder. And on the other hand, this slow build-up occurs. So vibration pumps generally take around 6 or 7 seconds until the full pressure is there. And here we're usually more at approximately 7 or 8 seconds. And that indeed benefits the coffee quite significantly.
That indeed also tends to forgive a bit if the coffee hasn't been prepared perfectly. So I would say this is a machine that, especially if you're just starting out with a coffee machine, is a particularly interesting choice, provided you find a heat exchange espresso machine intriguing. Michelle, when it comes to the processing quality, we certainly had quite a bit of critique to offer, but we already mentioned that at the beginning of the video, no need to list it again now. That brings us to the end of this video.
Yeah, because it's out of water.
It's out of water, we've had enough of this, so we're just gonna say goodbye. Take care, have a great week, drink good coffee, and we'll see each other again next week in the next video. Ciao and see you soon.